Hi, and welcome back. Zadar is a powerful quad signal generator from Chaos Devices, and since I started using it a while ago, a lot of people asked for a specific video about it. So here goes. Chaos Devices calls it a quad envelope generator, and for sure it can do envelope duties. But it's also capable of deep LFO work, as well as generating complex voltages and patterns, and even function as an oscillator. If you want to support my videos, hit the like and subscribe button. Or if you want to do more and get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. You can also support my channel through affiliate links in the video description. But now, let's dive right in. Let's start with having a look at the functions and features of Zadar. Although, as always, you can use the timeline if you like to jump straight to patch ideas. I'm gonna stick with calling Zadar a quad signal generator. The screen here is the go-to place to see what's going on. It shows a representation of the current shape, the channel selected, currently A, and the key settings for that channel. There are 4 identical channels, A, B, C, and D, and you can cycle through them with this button here. The 4 controls here all modify the settings for the currently selected channel, starting with this one here, which can be rotated to select the core shape. There are 260 shapes available. These are organized in banks of 10 with lots of different functions in mind. There are classic envelope and LFO shapes, but also complex voltages that work great when stretched over a long time, interesting patterns, complex transients, and so on. Although digital, the shapes generated by Zadar are vector shapes, meaning they have key points in their design, but moving and transitioning between those points is rendered in real time. This means you can stretch the shapes from a fraction of a millisecond to half an hour without any stepping or artifacts. A powerful aspect of Zadar is the possibility to alter the core shapes. You can use this knob, called the warp function, to deform the shape over the horizontal axis. And with a press, control what's called the response to deform over the vertical axis. This turns the many core shapes into a gazillion possibilities. This control sets the time it takes to complete the shape, which translates to frequency when the shape is looped, and this one sets the output level. These 3 have push functions as well, one to reverse the shape, one to set the retrigger behavior, and one to set the sustain point. With the sustain point set at the end of the signal, the sustain is off, so it just goes through the entire shape when it receives a trigger or gate. But you can set a sustain point at any place in the signal. When you feed the channel a continuous gate, it will hold the signal at the selected point as long as the gate is high. So, for example, if you want to recreate the effect of a simple ADSR, you set a point to this classic sustain looking part of the signal. Each channel has the same jacks. There's a trigger or gate input, an assignable CV input. This can control any of the parameters of that channel, like the speed, output level, warp and response settings, and, of course, a signal output. Zadar has an easy-to-use menu with just 3 pages. You can access the menu by pressing this central button, which is also used to cycle through the 3 pages. The first page is the CV assign page. In this page, each of the knobs control the settings for one of the channels. Push any of the encoders to cycle through what the CV input modulates, and rotate the encoder to set the modulation depth, either in a regular or inverted response. You can control all 4 channel inputs from this single page. So, for example, I can easily set the destination and modulation depth for channel C and D as well. there's also a chain menu, offering a few options. First off, if you don't use any of the chain options, the phase setting works like a trigger delay for each channel, which is fun. The repeat value defines how often a shape is repeated after the first. You can set this to infinite if you want that channel to function like an LFO, ongoing voltage, or a sound source. You can use the chain option to select one of 16 chain algorithms. These simply define how and which envelopes are chained in series. Some just fire once through the chain and some are looped. Envelopes not part of the chain can still be used completely individually. And finally, there's a preset page. This simply holds 18 slots, each saving all the module's parameters, which is great. I have one preset, for example, with 2 envelopes and 2 looping signals I use all the time as my base patch. But also an interesting chain setup, a quad oscillator, and so on. I think Zadar shines when creating a variety of complex voltages. But let's start with a couple of examples using just envelopes. Even though Zadar isn't a traditionally controlled envelope generator, you can easily use a channel as one. For example, by using a keyboard or controller's gate output and have the envelope modulate the filter and VCA in a simple synth voice. Here, a classic ADSR shape is selected, with a sustain point at the sustain part of the envelope. The combination of speed, warp, and response still give you almost all variations you expect. I think the fun though starts when you use the unique shapes available. For example, this one with a sustain point set in the middle. In this setup, the mod wheel output of the keyboard is used to modulate the warp. This gives direct control over the complex attack and decay shapes of the envelope. In the graphics in this video, I don't represent the used shapes exactly. They're just stylized reminders. You should definitely experiment with different shapes and settings in all of these patches. In this setup, 3 envelopes of Zadar are chained in a single cycle. So, if the first is triggered by a keyboard, they all fire once. The phase is set in such a way that they all fire at the same time. A simple synth voice is made with an oscillator, wavefolder, filter, and VCA. A short transient envelope is modulating the folder. The classic ADSR, the filter and VCA, and the reversed organic voltage is used to modulate the VCA, allowing a steady audio rate signal to modulate the filter as well. Ideas like these can add a lot of motion to a voice. Here is a similar concept with 3 envelopes of Zadar triggered in chain. This time they're triggered by a sequencer sent through a clock divider. These 3 envelopes create slow but rhythmic tempo sync modulation. The sequencer is tuning oscillator Sophia sent through a filter. The first 2 envelopes are modulating parameters on the oscillator, and the third is modulating the filter. That envelope has its output level modulated with a free-running LFO. Finally, a direct output of the clock is triggering a 4th envelope, modulating the filter as well. For the 4th envelope, a shape with 2 spikes is selected. This gives a feeling of a clock multiplied modulation. Having all these envelopes is great for drone and self-playing patches as well. Here is a similar setup, but without a sequencer. The 3 envelopes are set to be chained in a loop, so effectively the last one is triggering the first in the chain. The second envelope has its warp modulated by an LFO to add some motion to the modulation loop. And again, a 4th envelope is added modulating the filter. This one is triggered by a clock to add fast, steady movement. Complex envelopes can be used in lots of creative ways. For example, to create melodies. Here, a single envelope is sent to a quantizer to sequence a simple oscillator filter voice. The quantizer is triggered with a steady clock, but the envelope is triggered through a clock division. This creates looped sequences. A second envelope is triggered and modulating the filter to finish the voice. Tweaking the warp, response and level controls by hand will change the sequence created. Of course, you can modulate any of those parameters to automate variations. You can have a look at this video here if you'd like to learn more about making melodies with a quantizer. Beside envelopes, Zadar can create complex LFOs and voltages. Using it mostly comes down to finding what shapes work in your system. But here are a few examples. Here is a synth voice with oscillator, wavefolder, filter and stereo effect. In this case, a delay and reverb combo. A sequencer is creating a melody and triggering a complex envelope. The envelope is sent to a mixer and modulating the filter. An LFO is modulating the warp, creating subtle changes in the plucky sound of the envelope. A second channel of Zadar is looped and sent to the mixer, modulating the filter as well. The shape selected is a sine wave that has some speed variation built into it. Another channel of Zadar is said to have a looping, very long, complex, semi-random voltage modulating the wavefolder. And another more sample and hold style slow signal is modulating the delay time of the effect module. Here's another example with the same simple sequenced voice. This time the gate output of the sequencer is used on a more classic ADSR shape, with the sustain point set to the sustain part of the envelope. A slow LFO is modulating the response, effectively modulating the sustain level of the ADSR. A triple spike-shaped LFO is modulating the symmetry of the folder, and another creative shape is modulating the fold parameter of the folder. Finally, a simple looping sine-shaped LFO is modulating the frequency of one channel and simultaneously the warp of the other. Experiment with modulating the different parameters available. Here's the same voice again to keep things simple. This time though, the sequencer is triggering a simple fast decay envelope, sent to a mixer and modulating the filter. A simple LFO shape is used to modulate the repeat time of the envelope. So every time the sequencer advances a step, the envelope is triggered and looped a different number of times. A second, fairly basic LFO is added to the mix, modulating the filter as well. But this channel has its freeze function modulated with a slow complex voltage. This voltage holds the simple LFO shape when the voltage is above a threshold that can be set on the modulation page. Channels of Zadar can loop and reach audio rates, and even track 1 volt per octave pretty decent. This means Zadar can function as a simple oscillator with complex shapes. Here, 2 channels of Zadar are used as oscillators, one with a saw wave and one with a more complex glassy wave. One is sent through a filter and effect and used as the left channel. The other is just sent through a filter and used as the right channel. Both voices are sequenced and have their own envelope modulating their filter. 1, 3 and a 5-step sequence are used to create some interest. To be clear, the tracking isn't perfect, but fun and very usable if you keep the range somewhat limited. Another usable aspect of this is that it's easy to use Zadar for all sorts of audio rate modulation. Here's the same simple voice again, but this time a bandpass filter is used. The sequencer is triggering an envelope, modulating the bandwidth. One channel is used as oscillator with a simple saw wave modulating the wave folder. That channel receives a copy of the 1 volt per octave signal from the sequencer. Then an audio rate LFO is used to modulate the filter frequency. That LFO has its time parameter modulated as well, pulling the modulating LFO far in and out of audio rates. I want to keep this video compact and focus on Zadar itself, but I do want to briefly mention it. There is an expander available for Zadar. It offers 4 manual gate buttons, one for each channel. This can be nice for performances, but More important, it adds a second CV input to each of the 4 channels. I won't demo all the possibilities, but this opens up another level of modulation. For example, you can modulate the warp and frequency of an LFO, or the speed and response of an envelope, and so on. Smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me, and have a look here if you'd like to learn more. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and see you next time.